Second Book of Samuel, session 36. And when we recently started the Godly Marriage Conference, Godly Women Conferences, we tried to show how heartbroken Pharaoh is because of his wife, the children of Israel. And we saw quite a lot this far about this division in Father's house between his two children, the house of Judah and the house of Israel. But today is even more heartbreaking. There's a man from Belial. Do we know Belial? Always representing Satan, Beelzebub, evil men of mischief. So in 2 Samuel chapter 20, verse 1, there happened to be a man of Belial whose name was Sheva, the son of Bichri, a Benjamite. All right. So, Benjamin and Judah amalgamated together into the house of Judah. And of course, therefore, this Sheba is a Jew. So he's from the house of Judah. But instead of trying to bring King David's heart's desire into existence by working so that Israel and Judah can be joined, here we have a traitor, like we've seen so many times in the book of Judges and Joshua, how out of the tribe of Judah, the royal tribe, the kingly tribe, where the Messiah, the King of Kings, comes from, there's the Antichrist element, always working to break Father's heart and to do the opposite of what Father wants. And here we've got this son of Belial, whose name was Sheba, the son of Bichri, doing exactly the same. So let's have a look. Sheba or Sheva is the Hebrew word for seven. So not only is he from the kingly royal messianic tribe, his name is even 7, which is the number of Yahuwah. Everything is about 7. The 7 days, the 7,000 years, the 7 Moadim. Very important, the 7 feast days, Moadim, appointed times. All of these are part of God's kingdom. And here we've got a man representing God's kingdom from God's royal tribe, but he's a son of Satan. And to go even further, his father's name is Bichri, from Bakar, which means firstborn or birthright. So instead of Judah, the son of Judah, whose name represents God's 7, the perfect cycles of Yahuwah, who's supposed to bring joy to Yahuwah's heart. Instead of him being the firstborn and taking the firstborn blessing towards a restored kingdom where everything is perfect, he's the son of the firstborn. He's representing the firstborn, just like Cain was the firstborn, Ishmael was the firstborn, Esau was the firstborn. And with Joseph, it was Reuben and Judah who took the lead in selling Joseph into slavery. So the firstborns were, according to the Torah, always given to God. And then you could redeem your firstborn son. And then, of course, the Levite priests took the place of the firstborn son as priests. But the firstborn was always supposed to be for God's kingdom and to lead his family into godly obedience and love. But here we see exactly the opposite. Him taking his firstborn right, Bichri, him being the firstborn, him representing 7, the perfect number of Yahuwah, and him being from the tribe of Judah, is now turning towards the Antichrist kingdom. That is the vision in God's kingdom. Typical Babylonian mixing, taking the truth, but taking it into the deception of the Antichrist figure. So there happened to be a man of Belial, whose name was Sheva, the son of Bichri, a Benjamite, and he blew a trumpet. So who always blows trumpets? You always blow a trumpet when, it's a new moon or at the feast days, or when there's war, or when there is a gathering, you blow the trumpet. So instead of him blowing the trumpet to like Yeshua, who will announce the resurrection Or like anyone in the Bible who always blew trumpets to gather the ecclesia or the kahal, the people of God together, or people who blew the trumpet so that God's army can be gathered for battle, or the priest who blew the trumpet to announce the beginning of the feast day. Instead of doing the good thing for God's kingdom, he's blowing the trumpet to gather the people, God's own people, against God. So he blows the trumpet and he says, "We have no part in David." So who's this Antichrist with all these um, deceitfully looking like the true Messiah, but he's taking us away from King David, away from the son of David, Yeshua, the beloved, the kingdom of our king, out of the loins of David. Who's this figure? Here's his characteristics. He is from Satan, but he looks like the seven from Judah, the firstborn. Everything is exactly the same as Yeshua. Yeshua represents the seven. Yeshua is the firstborn. Yeshua is from the tribe of Judah. Yeshua blows the trumpet. But this one comes in a very similar um, revelation as Yeshua, but he does the opposite than the will of the Father is. So it says we have no part in David, neither do we have an inheritance in the son of Jesse. So David, of course, is the son of Jesse. And he says, every man back to his tents, O Israel. So here is exactly what Satan has done. Hasn't he stolen the 10 lost tribes and taken them basically into paganism, into all the Gentile nations? So back to your tents. You mustn't worry about coming to Jerusalem to keep the feasts. You mustn't worry about bowing before King David, whom God appointed, who's a messianic figure. You mustn't worry about obeying God and having one king over one um, restored nation. No, you need to go away from King David. You no longer have a part in him. And this is exactly the same as in 1 Kings 12, verse 16. You remember the whole thing where after the time of Solomon, you've got his son Rehoboam and Jeroboam. Rehoboam having charge over the 2 southern tribes and Jeroboam over the 10 northern tribes. And Jeroboam, after the house of Israel, also said exactly the same words. We have no part in David anymore. We are leaving Jerusalem. Back to your tents, O Israel, in the north, in Samaria. This is after the time of King Solomon. Exactly the same word. So they've got this kind of a antagonistic spirit inside of them. Israel, the divorced, unfaithful wife, always had this desertion. She always wanted to run away. She never wanted to submit and swallow her pride, repent, and be one with Judah to serve one king. So Rehoboam built 2 golden calves, and he basically said, Israel, you don't have to go up to Jerusalem anymore to worship. We will have our own feast days. He even brought in new dates for the feast days. So when Yom Teruah was kept on the 1st of Tishri, he would have Yom Teruah on the 1st of the next month. And he always said to Israel, don't go up to Jerusalem. I'm building a temple for you. I'm building gods for you that represents Yahuwah, typical replacing God. You can just worship here. Don't even let your heart pull you back to your beautiful Jerusalem. So every man of Israel went up from after David, and they followed Shiva, the son of Bichri. And this is exactly what Yeshua said. False messiahs will come and they will deceive the whole world and they will stop following me. They will what was that in Jeremiah 31? They rejected my covenant, although I was their husband, and they started following after the Antichrist. But it says in verse 2, but the men of Judah clave, they were clinging unto the king. And this reminds us of the book of Deuteronomy that says, what is it that God expects of us? Than to love Yahuwah, obey him, and to cling to him. So Judah kept on clinging to the king, like I explained to you yesterday as well. And this always reminds me of the prodigal son. The younger brother said, I want to go out of my father's house. I don't want to have anything to do with my father's house anymore. I have no inheritance left. I'm taking my inheritance and I'm going back to my own tent. I'm going to build my own tent. I'm going to have my own thing. I'm going to do what's right in my eyes. But the older brother, he was clinging to his father and he stayed with his father all the time. Beautiful younger brother, older brother, Israel. So David came to his house in Jerusalem and he took the 10 women, remember now, the 10 northern tribes of Israel just separate, just went away from David. Look how beautiful this is now confirmed in the spiritual with the 10 concubines. David took the 10 women, his concubines, whom he had left to keep the house. So remember, they then got raped by Absalom. So, because this is the kind of spirit that is inside the 10 northern tribes, the Bible beautifully explains how the 10 always gets raped and used and abused by the Antichrist. But King David comes back and he doesn't throw them away or divorce them or whatever, you know. He puts them in a ward, in a safe place, and he feeds them and he gives them food and he looks after them. But he never has intercourse with them again. He never goes to sleep with them again. There's no intimacy. So he went not in unto them ever again. So they were shut up unto the day of their death, living in widowhood. So unto the days of our death, the Gentile nations in whom Israel is scattered. If Israel doesn't wake up out of her death, if we don't see how the hand of Messiah brings the valley of dry bones out of death, then we are also going to die in our raped by the Antichrist widowhood. But if we die in Messiah, you know the whole thing about your rebirth as a new man and your baptism, you die with him so you can live with him. You know, this whole thing of being reborn. So if you don't physically die in your widowhood, your raped stage, your situation in which you are, because the Gentile nations has been abused by the false doctrine for, you know, not only since the Garden of Eden, but especially the last 2,000 years. If you don't die to that Egyptian sun god system that you are a widow in and where you've been raped all your life, it sounds horrible, I know, but you understand the whole concept of the biblical marriage and the biblical whore and the remarriage and the renewed covenant, then you'll die in that state. But once renewal comes, rebirth comes, and you are reborn, you are born again as a virgin. So the 10 women, if they can just like the 10 tribes, turn back to the covenant wherein the 7 of God is obeyed because we love Him, then we can be reborn as virgins and we are no longer widows and concubines that sits with this pain and loneliness until we die. But we can be restored into the King's kingdom. All right, now the next thing, and this is amazing. Then said the king to Amasa. So, first of all, he's speaking to Amasa, and then secondly, he's going to speak to Joab, and he's going to give them exactly the same instruction. He tells Amasa in verse 4, assemble men, the men of Judah, within 3 days, always 3 days, and then come here to me, be present. So Amasa went to assemble the men of Judah, but he tarried longer than the set time which was appointed unto him. So later on, David also said to Joab, Amasa is not taking me serious. He's not keeping his appointed times. And therefore Joab got the same instruction to assemble the men and follow after Belial's son, Sheva, the son of Bichri. All right, let's have a look at this. Amasa in the Hebrew means burden. So here we've got a man called by the king, being from the tribe of Judah, being somebody who is supposed to love the king, and it's not a burden for him to serve the king. It's the same with us. Here we have us, we love the king. All of Christianity says they love God, Jesus. Yet, like in Malachi 1 verse 4, they say, "Ah, it is such a burden to obey the Lord. From the rising of the sun unto the going down of the same, my name shall be great among the Gentiles," God says in Malachi 1:11. "In every place incense shall be offered unto my name, and pure offerings, for my name shall be great among the heathen. But you have profaned my name, because you say, Ah, behold, your offerings are such a burden, and you have snuffed at it." You did this. Huh, you sniffed at it. You don't want to do it. So, Amasa, we are supposed to serve our king, but it's a burden for us to keep the appointed times. 1 John 5 verse 3 says, "Keep the laws and the commandments of Yahuwah, including the appointed times, because they are not a burden." But Amasa, although he's got this great opportunity to serve King David and to stand up for King David's name within the Gentile nations, like Malachi 1 says, like God says in Malachi 1, and he can bring Israel back to the kingdom and help with the restoration, he doesn't take it serious. He tarries longer to fulfill the appointed times. Because in Hebrew, the appointed times is Moedim. And of course, Genesis 1 verse 14 says God made the sun and the moon and the stars for the Moedim. So David said to Abishai, "Now shall Sheva, the son of Bichri, do us more harm than Absalom did." Sorry, David said to Amasa and to Abishai, not Joab, "Take you your Lord's servants and pursue after Sheva. Otherwise, he's going to get into a fenced city and he's going to escape us, and we will not be able to bring Israel back." And they went out after him, Joab's men. So Abishai started going out to pursue Sheva. And then Joab's men, of course, Joab is a faithful servant of David. So his men, together with the Cherethites, the Pelethites, and all the mighty men, they all went out of Jerusalem to pursue Sheva, the son of Bichri. They all went with Abishai. Now, and this is beautiful. Guys, look at this. When there were a great stone, which is in Gibeon. So what does this remind you of? All the stones, all the great stones that was erected and put up as witnesses every time there was a covenant made or something. Even remember between Laban and Jacob, they put up a great stone because they made covenant and they got to agreements. And these great stones were always the witnesses about or over these covenants. And of course, Yeshua is the witness over every covenant. And Yeshua is called the great stone that was rejected by Judah, by the Pharisees, but even by Israel, replacing the great cornerstone with a false cornerstone of the Freemasons. So there was a great stone which was in Gibeon, and Amasa, the one that didn't take his appointed time seriously, and he was strolling, la 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 la, I'm on my way to do a great job for the king, but I'm sniffing the flowers along the way, and I'm not taking it seriously. So Amasa went before them, and Joab, remember Joab and his men was also going with Abishai. Joab was girded with a sword around his loins in a sheath. And as he went forth, it fell out. But he had a knife, a sword in his hand. So Joab came to this great stone, and he caught up with Amasa. So Amasa was lying, among the daisies in the field, not taking King David's instructions serious enough. And Joab was taking it seriously, and he caught up with Amasa. Amasa was sent long before Abishai. But here Joab is catching up with Amasa, and he says, "Hey, my brother," because they were brothers. They're from the tribe of Judah. Joshua says in the end days, brother against brother. "How are you? Are you in good health? Are you okay?" And Joab took Amasa by the beard with the right hand, as if to kiss him. Doesn't this remind you of the kiss of Esau, the kiss of Judah? But this was a kiss from those who follow the true Messiah and King David, coming just like Esther was living and working inside the Babylonian system. Daniel was inside the Antichrist Babylonian system, that represents the Antichrist system of the end days. Daniel, Joseph was inside the Egyptian system. So God sends, like we saw with the priests Zadok in the time of David, who worked inside Absalom's palace. So here we've got Job, who comes to him, who is a representation of those who actually say they love God, love the king, but they don't follow his instructions. So the Bible says in 1 John, they are liars. The truth is not in them. And if the truth is not in them, then it means the falsehood is in them, and then they are part of the false system. So he's taking this man by the beard with his right hand to kiss him. But Amasa did not see that there was a sword in Joab's hand. So Joab smote Amasa with the sword in his hand, in his fifth rib. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can put your hand on your ribs, count, feel your ribs. He put the sword in his fifth rib, and he shed out his bowels, sy ingewande, his guts, to the ground, and he died. Now, this is for me always amazing. Throughout the books of Judges, Joshua, and Samuel, we've seen many examples of swords being pushed into the ribs, sometimes of those who are the Antichrist figures, and sometimes of those who, in their passion for the king, went after the enemy and got slaughtered. We saw Abner. Remember Abner? We saw Asahel. Remember Asahel? And Ishbosheth. We looked at these in previous sessions in details. How Yeshua also, with a spear in his ribs. The Bible doesn't say the number of the rib, but we find it so many times, most probably as a messianic fulfillment of these prophecies in the fifth rib. But here the ones following after a not so serious about God's kingdom anymore, Antichrist, lame, lazy follower, here he is killed by a sword in his fifth rib, and his bowels fell out. So he didn't take the Moadim serious, the appointed times. So didn't the wife of Numbers 5 take her marriage seriously, representing the whore, the unfaithful wife who doesn't take her husband, her heavenly husband's Moadim and commandments seriously. And in Numbers 5 verse 22, the priest gives her the bitter cup to drink, and her bowels, her stomach, her guts starts rotting. Just like here, Amasa's guts fell out. Also, you can remember very clearly how in Acts chapter 1 verse 18, Judas, who represents the whoring wife, his bowels fell out. He hanged himself, remember, he fell to the ground, and his guts fell out. Oh, sorry, guys. In 2 Chronicles 21, verse, from verse 1 all the way to verse 15, here Elijah, who was supposedly taken up into heaven in a chariot of fire, but here, years later, there comes a letter from Elijah unto Jehoram, the king who rules over Judah. And the letter says in 2 Chronicles 21, verse 13. You have not walked in the ways of your fathers who has obeyed God. You have made Judah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem to go whoring. Therefore, in verse 15, you'll be struck with a great sickness and a disease of your bowels, your guts, jou ingewande, until your bowels will fall out. Can you see this um, confirmation of confirmation? How your bowels start rotting and falling out, or whether you are hanged like Judas, or struck by a sword like Amasa, or you get sick like this king of Judah, or you are a whoring wife like the wife of Numbers. When you don't follow the Moadim, when you don't take God seriously and God's appointed dates and times and laws, your bowels start rotting and will fall out. It's better to be like Jeremiah, who loves God and who's in anguish over Judah's desolation in Jeremiah 4. Jeremiah wants God's two houses to come back together and form one kingdom. And for him who loves God and who's in anguish until the king, like remember yesterday, Mephibosheth and Barzillai and Kimham, they were in anguish for the king to be restored in his kingdom. So Jeremiah 4 verse 19 says, my bowels, I don't have peace. I've got pain in my bowels. So his bowels is not rotting and falling out, but his bowels are paining for the manifestation of the king that will come back. So let's rather be like Jeremiah, or let's be like the beautiful bride of Song of Solomon's 5 verse 4. My beloved put in his hand by the hole of the door. So here she's waiting for her beloved to come into, the wedding room. And he puts his hand into the place where you open the door. And the moment she saw his hand coming through that hole so that her beloved can open the door, her bowels were moved inside of her. And I rose up to open the door for my beloved. You know, when you feel that fluttering in your stomach, when you fell in love many, many, many years ago, you felt that fluttering in your stomach. Or when you've got a sudden fright, you feel that in your stomach, it's like your stomach is turning. You felt that love sickness and fear and shock, those things can cause your stomach to feel that movement. So she, just like Jeremiah, she wants her husband, her beloved, the bridegroom, to come back, to take her, who by now should be a restored wife. The houses are restored back into one bride, and now she's waiting for her king, and her bowels are moved within her. They are not rotting, they are not falling out. What an amazing picture here in 2 Samuel chapter 20. So Joab and Abishai, his brother, pursued after Sheva, the son of Bichri. And I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you again tomorrow so we can continue with this last very interesting, packed full of information chapters of the second book of Samuel.